All right, I'm going to open today's meeting for Monday, May 25th, 2015. And this is the Architectural Board of Review in Santa Barbara. Our first order of business is public comment. If there's anyone in the public who would like to comment on any item not on today's agenda, they're welcome to come forward. And seeing no one, we'll go to item D, approval of the minutes for the Architectural Board of Review for Monday, May 11th. And if anyone has any comments on item 1 or anything before item 1, item 2, three, item 4, five, 6, or 7.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm not sure what item it is, but it was the Paul Zink project. There was a comment about the gap should be larger. I think it was the depth of the gap, not the actual gap.
Which project is this?
Item?
I'm trying to find it here. 1 second. It's the
You know what, the gap, is this Piker's project?
no.
It was item 3.
Item 3.
Item 3?
Yeah, thank you.
Oasis Inn. The gap. Oh,
Verse 6?
oh, I see. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, it was the depth, not the overall width of the gap. I'm sorry.
Page 4, bottom of the page. It's number 6 under the comments.
Yeah, it was the depth of the gap.
Thank you for clarifying that. All right. Did you have any other comments on items we've covered already? You're welcome to bring those up. And I'm taking that no board members have comments on any of the other items. All right. So we need a first and a second for approval of the minutes as amended.
First?
Who was the first?
From Scott.
Oh, second.
Amy, sorry. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Yeah.
So we'll go on to the approval of the consent calendar minutes for May 18th.
Item A at 32 Anacapa Street, granted final approval as noted. Item B at 100 Barranca Avenue, project design approval and final approval as noted. Item C, 521 Firestone Road, was continued indefinitely to ABR staff for final approval. Item D at 2911 De La Vina Street was granted final approval as noted. Item E, 1187 Coast Village Road, was continued indefinitely. Item F at 3885 State Street was granted final approval as submitted. And item G at 2334 De La Vina was granted final approval as submitted.
All right. So we need a first and a second for the consent calendar.
First.
Scott.
I'll second it.
Second by Amy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This is an order of business. I noticed that when we approve minutes, we make a motion first, then we review the minutes, and then we vote on them, typically. But it seems to make more sense to have the motion come after the minutes are reviewed or read out. Is there a reason for that?
Well, all I know is when I 9 years doing HLC, they would do it the way you just did it now.
Oh yeah?
They wouldn't
Okay.
They wouldn't ask for approval first and second and then make changes to it. They would voice their concerns or clarifications and then get a first and second. I don't think it really matters which way you do it, Mr. Lemon.
I believe it evolved over time. I think the question becomes, how much edits are you going to make versus an affirmation? We see more and more editing over the years, so we wouldn't have a problem with you changing the order.
Okay.
You felt comfortable
Very
with
good.
that?
Very good. Thanks. Seems natural for it to go that way. So announcements, requests by applicants for continuances, et cetera.
I have an announcement, Mr. Chair. I'll be
Yes.
stepping down from the last two items of the agenda.
I just have one announcement that Board Member Poole will arrive at 4 p.m. today, and then we'll leave at 7:30 p.m., but I hope we're already gone by that time.
All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just wanted to confirm that you all did receive an email with a memorandum regarding the AUD program.
Yes.
I think that was timely, given that we still have a lot of projects are before you, and we know they're controversial, and I think that background information will be helpful as you review these projects. Ideally, we're going to come up with some type of checklist also that says these are things you do look at, and these are things that you defer to staff.
That'd be great, and we do appreciate those emails. Thank you. Subcommittee reports. Okay, doesn't seem to be any. And so we would,
Mr. Chair, I do have one thing that's related to public art.
okay,
It heads up that the art program down at the Funk Zone, it will be returning back. And the reason is it was sort of given a conditional approval pending the outcome of a couple of sites, and some of them fell through. So I think they're looking for alternative sites. So we asked that they come back to show those locations. However, they've implied that their program guidelines inferred that it would be a consent review. But when I looked at the hearing, the consent feature was possibly to alert you that there would be a change in the murals rather than new locations. But I just wanted to confirm how comfortable you are putting new locations on the consent calendar versus the full board.
I would take a
What
straw
about-
vote on that.
What locations?
This
New?
is in the Funk Zone. There would be new locations.
So new additional?
New additional locations. Again, two of the locations did not come to fruition yet, and so they're looking at different buildings. You approved, I think, 8 locations on the first go-around for 3 years.
So they want to substitute other locations, or they're adding?
Add,
Add,
So
okay.
the two that are not committed are still open.
one is not, it was
One is
denied.
being withdrawn.
It was denied existence. It was a little garden with some containers that they were trying to erect and use as part of a site, and that was not approved.
By whom?
The city building official.
Is that the Mason Lane project?
Yes, that was part of the site, that they were going to have a garden. So I'm just letting you know that my preference is probably to put it on full board, but if you feel consent is fine.
How many board members feel like it should come to the full board? Say aye or raise your hand.
Okay, and that's what
It's a little
that'll end up.
loosey stuff going on here.
They also, I've asked them to expand on their oversight, because one of the commitments to this board was there would be some oversight, and they're not really keen going to the Visual Arts and Public Places Committee. So I said, come up with a different proposal, and we'll see if the board accepts that.
Okay.
From my perspective, the last review, the architectural board showed a lot of favor towards the effort being made, and basically approved all the locations that were proposed. So I don't see a lot of opposition to it, but I do think we do need to be looking carefully at it.
And just to let you know that the city is struggling with temporary murals throughout the city and trying to establish what rules there are. And because of the Gator Boy mural that was denied by the Historic Landmarks Commission, I was specifically requested to adjust some of the guidelines to add more flexibility for temporary art. We've seen it at Indigo Hotel also, where the HLC has allowed certain murals to happen in the EPV. So I think there's still a need for the ABR to be clear on what the process is. So you'll be hearing more about that as we go to City Council to get direction on that.
Great, thank you. All right, so we're on to the first item, which just happens to be a presentation by Mr. Limon.
So as you all are familiar, if you've been on board for a while, that every year staff is requested to provide some type of training. And since this issue came up recently as a result of an appeal, actually, we thought that we would give you the same training that we provided the Historic Landmarks Commission earlier this year. And it's also to give you an update on what the city is doing to try to improve the way we notice persons that are interested in projects. So I'd like to walk you through some of the recent changes we've made regarding noticing, and also give you a primer again on what we do for projects. So the basics are that there is state law and municipal code requirements that provide for various types to require a notice prior to the first concept review. This is a standard requirement for projects of a certain size and type, usually based on whether it's a new building or a size of a building. Second stories, for example, are noticed for single-family design board. But there's also additional mailed notice provided if projects require planning commission or staff hearing officer approval. So a lot of the projects that you see zoning modification required are also being noticed. And the purpose of it being noticed at the design review hearing, that was not always the case, is to give persons early notice to be able to contribute into the review of your comments on the projects, rather than just notice it for the staff hearing officer. We felt that was too late. So about 8 years ago, we changed the ordinance to include that the notice also happened here. So a lot of projects that are just pursuing zoning modifications also get noticed here for that purpose. We require a minimum of 10 calendar days prior to hearing. That is a requirement that we break, that we often adjust hearing dates because of the date of application that's submitted. We have to anticipate that there be at least 10 calendar days to have that mailed notice go out. Now, what that really means is it means there's possibly 18 to 21 days in advance that you need to submit, because we have to do a zoning check on projects, primarily new projects. So the earlier the better projects gets into the process. People think that they come in 1 week prior. Well, that's no longer the case when you have a noticing requirement. There's a need to actually prepare the notice to understand the project and so forth. So that's an additional lead time that people have to factor in. And obviously, we notice within a certain radius of property, and the standard set is 300 feet. Again, that was adjusted because we had various distances. It was 100, 300, and 450 feet. And so several years ago, we adjusted it to all be 300 feet within the property perimeter. And we also have some specific coastal development permits that need noticing of tenants and occupants within 100 feet radius. So that's something that, in addition to our regular noticing, we actually have to notice the occupants within that distance. So that's what normal mail notice is. We also have additional noticing methods. The city implemented a on-site yellow sign posting requirement also. That typically gives the property some visual recognition that something's going to happen. We also have a hand-delivered requirement in delivery to tenants and occupants of 10 closest lots for the single-family design board projects. That's not required for ABR projects, but it's something that the council thought was important to let persons that are just renters also be aware of a project in order to allow them to participate in the process. So this is where there's some additional changes that have occurred recently, and I wanted to walk you through sort of what we do for interested parties. Members of the public interested in a project need to request to be added onto the interested parties list. That's not always understood, and for that reason, we have adjusted our speaker slip to make it very clear that if they don't give us their address and or email address, we cannot provide a subsequent notice. So you'll see some adjustments in these speaker slips that are primarily focused on making sure that people understand if they don't indicate they're interested to be noticed on subsequent meetings, they will not be provided that notice. Now, one of the things that's interesting also is that if you send an email, it's understood that you are interested in the project. And over the course of time, we've had to either scramble to find out their address because they only just sent us an email address, right? And we were sending them agendas via the regular mail. Well, now we've actually adjusted our process to send out email courtesies notification, which is preferable if people are contacting us versus on email notification. They want an email back. And that was not always the case. So this has been a recent adjustment, and it takes a lot of effort on our admin staff to keep track of all these emails and sometimes concurrent mode notices that are being sent out, regular agendas and email agendas. So just to have you understand that. So what's people need to understand is that subsequent mailings are not the required notice. So you don't get the 10-day advance notice lead time. And that's always why there's a preference to get email, because if we use regular email or regular mail, U.S. mail, post office mail, we do not get those agendas on time to applicants and people interested in coming to speak before you. So that's why we're gradually heading towards emails as the preferred method. And it's actually put down here, please add me to the email list for future agendas for this item. And we ask for the email address, and then lower we say, I prefer the regular mail notification, understanding that they would be sent U.S. Postal Service and arrive later than email. So again, that's what we're doing now. And if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead.
So if a project is going to be reviewed at ABR for the concept review, first review,
hearing, yes.
and the interested parties are noticed, and in that first review, the concept is rejected, and it goes back and it's in a redesign, and it comes back a second hearing, still at the concept review because the first one was rejected,
Right.
And there's no notice of that, right?
That's correct. That would not be technically the first concept hearing. It would be the second concept hearing. So when you say rejected, the only way it becomes a new application is if you deny it, and that's rare on a new project.
But I'm concerned about the numbers of complaints that come up of the owners or neighbors, whatever. I wasn't properly
Right.
noticed.
Well, this is
And
why we're
things can change. Like for example, Ealing's Park is changing all the time, and there are a lot of interested parties there. And then 1818 Castillo, same thing. So I'm wondering, is this a new policy not to notice these people on the following, or is this a policy that will change the more we get into email?
It will not change. Our ordinance requires only one mailed notice.
That's legal.
Yes. Now, where we have made some adjustments in that policy has been when a project significantly gets changed, where the original notice is no longer valid, and we actually have, on some occasions, asked to have a project re-noticed because of that. You know, it came in as a 4,000 square foot project, and now it's a 6,000 square foot project. We don't want the neighborhood to feel that there was a switch occurring there, and they were unaware of that change.
That one.
Yes. If the staff, when reviewing the project, you know, if it's an intensification and a larger project, we would change it and provide a new notice. The other factor that we use is time. We know that we've learned that concept review comments can linger, and if it's 3 years later, we feel that's appropriate. There might be new persons in the neighborhood now that were unaware of the project. We feel compelled to have a re-notice of the project at that time.
So is it 3 years time, or is it like a 1 year, no activity for a year?
No, 1 year would not be sufficient for a re-notice. It's multiple years.
Okay.
Yeah.
But isn't it true that there's noticing for the first ABR review, and then if there's a staff hearing officer review or planning commission review, that also gets noticed?
Yes, I didn't imply that there were no other notices. I was saying at design review hearings, and often that's what we're dealing with. We have a requirement for other public hearings to be noticed and other decision makers.
Thanks.
Right? Okay. Yes.
So for concept review, instead of just reiterating what you were saying, instead of submitting the week before to get onto the agenda, you have to now think like 2 weeks before, essentially,
Well,
for a
we've
concept?
actually factored it, it's 18 to 21 days
18
before.
Right, so it's, okay.
Because we need some additional staff time to do the zoning check, which we
Right.
typically do, and to do the actual notice itself, to prepare the notice.
Okay,
So that's why some people miss that cycle, because
Right.
they think that you're coming in at 14 days. If it was 14 days, it makes us have to do a lot of things in 4 days to be able to get it in the mail.
right, right,
And that's why we ask for more lead time.
okay.
Cities still have the computerized address lists of people within the 300-foot
Yes,
radius? and
yes,
They prepare the mailing list?
yes. It's
They
all
put the
done by
stamps on the envelopes and...
It's all done by city for a fee.
For a
We
fee.
also have a provision that allows applicants to do their own mailing list without having the city charge I think it's a $125
Yeah,
fee.
it's a-
So
Yeah.
we think it's a pretty
Okay.
good deal to
Thank
do
you.
it ourselves. So I wanted to point out some of the common noticing problems that have happened, and this is why we're adjusting some of these things that we do. Members of the public are unaware they need to opt into the interested parties list to receive the notice of subsequent project hearings. Again, they show up and they don't fill out the form correctly, don't give us the address, feel it's incomplete, and we don't get them on. There's also, they are not added to the project case or to the parcel by staff error. That has happened. Agendas have not been sent out because we get these slips and we're supposed to get them entered into our computer, and sometimes they fall between the cracks. And so it's very important not to lose the slips so we can get them in. And agendas are not received in a timely manner. So the subsequent hearings that happened, some people have complained they've gotten their agendas on a Tuesday or Wednesday when the meeting was on a Monday. Now, we can't control the U.S. mail, and so that's why, again, we're gravitating towards the email as a solution. And then we've had some problems with on-site posting, people claiming that they didn't see the yellow placard sign out in the site, or was damaged, or it becomes faded in the sun, or is actually removed from the site. And that is an additional noticing process, and that is not a basis for having to renotice a project if for some reason the sign is not out there. We would just ask that it be replaced back up for the time where there are public hearings occurring.
Okay, so those signs should stay up until the project's approved, has design approval, and then it
Has
can come down.
approvals, right.
Building permit approval or design
No,
approval?
it's through our planning process. So if you
Okay.
haven't gotten approval through the planning process for planning commission and or our design review boards, it has to remain up.
Okay.
And then we also have the common noticing problems for single-family residence projects, which you actually have to submit affidavits that show that you've contacted the adjacent tenants or neighbors, which are within the 10 closest neighbor homes, and that you've done some on-site posting of signs prior to the 10 days. So these are affidavits that are actually required to be provided. So one of the interesting things that we've learned recently is if you are an interested party and you make that request to be noticed, the city has an obligation to provide that notice. And if the city does not send out notices correctly, a rehearing of the item is required if evidence is discovered that the notices were not sent out. And this has actually happened recently where we didn't have some of the people added to the case. They were not subsequently noticed, and they claimed that that was not proper notification because they were on record as wanting a notice. Some of them didn't complete their address, and some of them did put their email addresses. So we sent the email notification to some of them, and some of them didn't get the hard copy notices. And so this dual system is causing us a little havoc right now because not everybody has an email at this point, even though people think that everybody has emails. Some do not. And this is just a problem that we're working out, and hopefully we won't have this renoticing issue. It happened at actually HLC, where an appeal was filed on the basis of them not receiving proper notice, and our city attorney said, yes, they are required to have a notice, and therefore the appeal item was having to be renoticed because of that reason. Now, what we have done in the past is we've directed folks to the MySB service. This is part of the city's website, Santa Barbara CA Gov MySB. The system allows you to manage subscriptions to city email lists. It's a wide variety of subscriptions, including all future ABR agendas. But the problem with that subscription is it sends all agendas to the applicant. So if you don't know, it's almost like crying wolf. The city will send you an agenda and you're thinking it's your project and you have to go through the agenda and see that it's not on. So that's why people don't prefer that type of notice. We'll send you all the agendas. Now we're sending this courtesy email based on your actual project. So I think that's the solution. But this is a service that we tell people. And some of the things that we've done recently is that we've added this interested party language to agendas. If you look at all the agendas, there's a little section now where it extracts people. I think it's on page 2 under interested parties. There's some actual language that talks about that MySB form and also how to become an interested party, so we can send you an agenda and an email if that's what your preference is.
Where is that?
It's in the center under interested parties.
Oh, okay.
So I just wanted to let you know that we're doing our best to adjust and try to tell folks how to become an interested party. And we've also changed our notices, our mailed notices, that it has some more language in there, similar language that says, if you really want to be involved with the project, to follow it along, please come down and speak on the item, fill out your speaker slip, and tell us your email so we can have you continue to receive these agendas. So as a future, we believe the technology will allow for some additional changes. I know everybody feels that there are some programs out there that will automatically take in information and be able to communicate more effectively. We're going to upgrade our internal permit tracking system, our advantage tracking systems. I think there's going to be some new features in there to improve and add more email lists so we can have this information more readily when people come in and request to be noticed.
One more question.
Yeah.
Of course, we do want to encourage the public, the interested public, to come in and make comments. However, as we find ourselves also, in some cases, having lots of public comment, and in a lot of cases, the comments being made have to do with noise or, no street parking or items that are not related to design review per se. And often we'll have people talk for a long time on those issues. What's your take on that? Do you think that the ABR is an appropriate venue for people to come and verbalize those concerns, or should we somehow let the public know when we send out these notices that this is an ABR meeting,
Sure.
We're looking at aesthetics,
Right.
and it has a limitation as to what issues can be addressed. Right. We don't want people to spin their wheels, take the time to come down here, and then find, well, they don't want to listen to me.
Right.
So.
I think, Mr. Green, I think that's important to remember, because our mailed notice does indicate specifically that the focus is on aesthetics, architectural review.
Okay.
So there are some clear language direction there. The problem, as you know, is that people take this opportunity to try to come forward and start complaining about things that they are dealing with already in the neighborhood, and they feel that this is the tool to sort of fix that issue. Mm-hmm. I think it's always important to either limit those type of comments without cutting people off, because people feel like this is their right to be heard. So maintaining that 2-minute threshold and actually reminding them to please focus on what's before you, which is the architectural design of the project. Okay. And sometimes it does involve cutting them short. That you're entitled to do that. You have to manage your time the best you can. And if you're faced with a lot of folks, I know that I've advised boards that if you got 12 people wanting to speak, that's going to be a half hour at least if you let them all speak. And if you have 2 people, maybe you'll allow more latitude on those 2 people versus when you have a lot of speakers.
Okay. Thanks for looking into this and
Okay.
giving the update. So unless there's other questions from the board members, we'll go on to the next item, which is 1516 Castillo Street. The project was last reviewed August 4th. Thank you. and it's a proposal to eliminate 2 legal dwelling units and restore the duplex and single-family dwelling back to a total of 3 dwelling units. Staff hearing officer approval is granted for the zoning modifications that were required. And let's see what we said last time you were here. So we have a list of 8 comments, it looks like. Yeah, August 4th. Has the project changed substantially since we looked at it last?
Not too much.
No? Okay. Well, we'll just want to make sure that you cover all of those items, so I'll let you give a preliminary introduction and tell us what's happened since you were last here, and then we'll go through those items. How does that sound?
That sounds good.
Okay.
My name is Misael Contreras, and I'm representative for Windward Engineering.
I'm Scott Wilson. I'm the owner.
Okay. Welcome.
So the items that were addressed last time that came up was the modification for 3 uncovered parking spaces in the rear. Which was granted with terms and conditions which we have addressed. That was the first item.
I'm just going to read that out. The board finds the proposed parking modification request for 3 uncovered parking stalls to be aesthetically appropriate and does not pose consistency issues with Architectural Board of Review design guidelines.
Correct. So we went ahead and presented to the board, and our modification for the 3 uncovered parking spaces was approved.
Okay.
The second item was to provide adequate landscaping around the 3 uncovered parking stalls, preferably taller screening landscaping. We go to the landscaping.
Do board members recall this project?
Been a while, hasn't it?
Since August.
I probably was the
2014.
only one who wasn't here.
It's actually
Yeah,
been
so-
going for about 18 months total. And we've had some issues with the parking to resolve it. The first thing was the historical value that we had to work out.
I'm just wondering if you could give a brief overall
Oh, yes, of course.
Why don't I do that?
summary
Yeah,
of what's
So
there.
I purchased the property about 2 years ago from somebody that had turned the property into a 5-plex. We had bathrooms in the closets and kitchens in the living rooms, turned single units into studios kind of thing. He built an additional dwelling unit in the attic of this unit here. So in total, he had 1 unit here, 1 unit downstairs, 1 unit here, and 2 in the back for 5. When I purchased the property, there were a bunch of zoning infractions, and I thought it was going to be a quick fix. We got into it. There was obviously a little bit more that we had to iron out with you guys here at the city and the ABR and the Historical Landmarks Committee and all that kind of stuff.
Photos, please.
So originally, all I ever intended was just to turn it back into a legal triplex, which was deemed by the city many years ago. One of the hiccups was there was no original plans at the city because it was built in the 1890s. Any architectural value that has been on this property has since been removed. Over 100 years of repairs and remodels, and so it really was an eyesore for the neighborhood. The big hiccup.
Photos are in here. Oh, okay.
One of the big hiccups was, I guess, maybe on the Sanborn map, there was a photo of a 1-car garage that has since been removed. The previous owner said he had never even seen it, so this is pre-1975-ish. So the city had requested either 1 covered parking spot or 6 uncovered, but obviously there wasn't room for the 6, so we needed to get them to approve for 3. And then basically that was it. We had some open space requirements that we're trying to fill, and things. I don't know if those were addressed in there, but that's what we'll get to today, I think. And
Okay. Are there any photos here from the street? These look like interior shots.
there should be.
Yeah.
No, that's not the house.
Oh.
This is from the street here. I don't know.
This one?
Yeah, this one. Here we go.
Okay.
Sorry, I was right in front of me. So yeah, so here's the street
Okay.
view. They've enclosed this front porch that we're restoring. This was an additional unit, illegal dwelling unit, that we're going to restore the covered porch there.
Okay.
Then we came back and you guys requested a landscape plan for this. So now we're going to be putting the retention area in the front of it. And also you also requested that we remove the blacktop from the property. And then since we were changing the roof line back to the original roof line, we had to adhere to the stormwater management and everything. So now trying to collect everything right out. So it's just been a whole list of things that we keep going back and forth to try to.
So the architectural changes, this is the demo plan?
I believe so, yes.
You're opening up the porch, as you mentioned.
Yeah, this was turned into a bedroom, so now this will be back to the original porch that it was.
In terms of the exterior, so these stairs are being removed, looks like?
Yes.
Okay. And
All of
then,
this stuff off the back will be removed.
okay. And then, like you said, the second story.
Yeah, that's
This is all
everything
being
on the
taken
back will
off.
be gone, and then this roof will be replaced.
I see. And this is what the new plan looks like. And that's your restored street view.
Right. So now instead of it having the kind of that boxy feel in the front, now it'll have this gable back and the columns. I think the city will be really happy with the finished project.
Yeah. Okay, so now we can go back to going through the list. So there was a request for additional landscaping around the uncovered parking stalls, preferably taller.
So what we did, we brought this, the icy blue cont'd-SFR, and we put it around the parking so it creates screening around the parking stalls. So these grow pretty tall. I think they grow up to 10 feet. The cont'd-SFR, they do grow pretty tall. Provide a landscape plan with an outdoor lighting fixture plan and details. There's no landscape lighting proposed. However, we do have an outdoor lighting fixture on A602. So if you can go back. So this is our outdoor lighting fixture that we're proposing.
Is there a lighting plan that shows location or floor plan?
I believe that's on our sheet. Alright, so we have a sconce there and a sconce at the
Okay. Looks like just one. These are recessed. Are these recessed into the
That's
ceiling?
right, actually those are recessed into the ceiling, so it's just this one that we're proposing.
All right.
There's a small symbol here that looks like a different symbol.
That's the door chime, or the doorbell.
Yeah.
It's small.
Yeah,
right.
The next item was provide vine pockets along the fence. That's on the landscape plan. Vine pockets. That's actually so instead of doing pockets, we did a whole strip along the fence with.
This is a very tight driveway with an existing wood fence that runs along here, and obviously shared with the neighbors there. It'd be very hard to get anything of space in there. I think the driveway in itself is only maybe 10 or 11 feet wide at its narrowest up here.
Does it have this ribbon already in it? This planting
No,
ribbon?
that's
You're adding it?
You guys actually requested at the last meeting to remove a lot of this blacktop that's there.
Right, that's another one of our items. Actually, that's the next item. So the next one is to show stormwater management program compliance. And So we added the BMP notes on G001, downspout location.
Is there a paving plan, or is it just notes?
Notes, we're doing fire retention, rain garden at the front. And so here are our BMP notes, stormwater to address how to do that. Our site plan shows a bioretention area with channel drain here, and the water that's running off is also going to be filtered through this ribbon, any water that's coming off the driveway. And at the end, it'll come into this rain garden, which is the planting that's happening there is shown on our landscape plan as well.
Can we see that?
So what's happening here?
So that will exit through the existing retaining wall?
It's going to be, right, it's going to go, this is a proposed wall, and it's a curb, and it's going to go through that. It's going to stop, and the channel's going to enter through here and drain into to that rain garden.
This is a curb. Is that what you're saying? This is a curb?
Retaining curb, yeah.
It's obviously higher at the street, and it recesses back.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you can actually see that cut right there.
Can you pass the other 3Ds down? Just need one of each. Oh, they're all different.
These are all different.
Nice images.
These are some 3D shots of the sign.
Street tree at the front of the property is what.
The next item, provide a street tree, which is here, our bottle tree. And we have a silver carpet on the parkway, which was another item that they asked for. Number 7, add permeable paving for the driveway. So permeable pavers are no longer being proposed. So in order to address that loss of concrete weight, we're doing the ribbon.
Good.
Downspouts, that's on A101. Which are here. All of these downspouts connect to the landscape areas. They'll drain to the landscaping nearby. So here's another. And final number 8, provide additional window details to provide a consistent window style to replace the original double hung. That is on A501. So the trim is going to be made of wood to match the existing windows. They're proposed vinyl windows, but the trim is, the way that we build the trim is going to be to match the existing. And I believe, and here are our BMP details.
You brought a clipboard as well, right? Is that buried under here?
I think I may have swallowed it here.
Right, these are the colors that we're proposing.
So the red is basically accent on the posts?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the windows will be that color, is that right?
These are the trim, right, colors. Let's see if there's
Windows or
trim and windows. I
Oh,
believe there's
you said the
a.
windows are white vinyl, is that right?
Yeah, I would say that the windows would
Or-
not be that color.
They're white vinyl, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Unless you went for the putty colored
Right,
white
yeah.
vinyl.
all right. Well, that seems to cover all the items. Is there anything else you want to include?
I believe that was.
At the moment.
Okay. So we'll open public comment. Seeing no one, we'll go on to questions from the board and start with Tip, or Stephanie, sorry. Stephanie?
Yes. The reason that you selected casement for your window style, is that because the vinyl windows don't come in a double hung style?
There's 2 sheets.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure why, what the ultimate goal was by selecting those. Do you know?
The casements on the front. I'm sorry, which casements?
It's like on the sides, and
All the sides?
you see them here.
Oh. Oh, right. Actually, those are to match existing. The only ones that are double hung are, I believe, right in the front.
In the front of the
Let's
house.
see.
Okay, so this is the rear unit. So the front of the house has all double hungs, and it's only the rear unit without, because it looks like there's some
So
on
these
the
are
back
the
of the.
double hung. Yeah, this is the front, on the south elevation. That's the front.
Right.
And
It's hard to remember exactly right now, but I think the only original windows in the whole place are these here, and a pair around the side. I think the windowsill height in this room is maybe like 8 inches. So it's obviously going to have to change. We're going to have to bring that window height up a little bit, is what we're proposing.
Is it all new windows? Or,
Yeah.
okay.
It's a whole mixed bag over there of different years and different windows, aluminum.
It's a history of windows.
Yeah, I mean,
whole catalog.
That's my only question.
Tip?
No questions.
What page was that window detail on again?
501.
501. Scott, go ahead.
No questions.
Courtney?
What is the width of the driveway? You mentioned it was pretty narrow. I don't see a dimension.
somebody has a scale.
At the front,
10.3.
he said 10 feet up here.
10.3.
And that's actually not including this planter. I believe that
Looks like it's
planter-
dimension to the outside edge
right.
of the planter.
Right. So the planter, I believe we called it a 1 foot planter.
Well, it looks like you have 8, and 4, 4, and 2. Is that 8 or 3? I can't see from
3.
Yeah,
yeah.
Right, so
Yes,
it looks
that's-
like you have
10'3", right to
10'3".
here.
And then the width of the planter is
2, 3.
2 foot 3?
It's like a permeable paver strip.
Right.
It's not a
Yeah.
planting
The
strip.
planter
No, the
with the
planter.
vines
The
along the
planter,
fence.
Next to the building,
I believe that's a foot.
like about 1 foot.
It's definitely not 2 feet.
Yeah, it's about a foot.
Is that curved or is that just flat?
It's flat.
Flat.
So you're just going to saw cut out the asphalt?
Well, the asphalt's going to be. Yeah, I would say. Yeah, I think there is some sort of. I mean, it might be dirt underneath. It's the wood fence right up there, and then the neighbor has vines growing over the other side of the fence there. I'm not exactly sure how wide it is, but yes, in which case we would just saw cut and put it in.
Removing the AC paving, right?
Right. Yeah.
Put in concrete.
Concrete.
Yeah. All of it's coming out anyways.
Oh, you're installing, okay, so that, so,
The real restrictions on the driveway are obviously right here to here, because there's nothing we can do to increase the size.
I'm not asking you to increase
Yeah.
it, I just wanted to know the width.
Okay.
So can you explain again the reasoning behind not providing permeable paving within the driveway? If you're pulling out the asphalt, you're proposing to replace with concrete, is that right?
It's a relatively high cost. So we decided to do a river down the middle instead of doing permeable pavers.
The driveway is 155 feet long. It's quite a bit of I mean, obviously, cost comes into mind as far as anything on this is concerned, because it is, obviously, it's taken a long time to get to where we are even right now, and the amount of money that we're putting into the house, anywhere that we can save, if we can bring it back to like little concrete ribbons with some sort of landscaping or permeable, and, you know, that I think that as far as the water concerned and getting down here into the retention, I think we've met the requirements. But you know, to say that it's only cost driven, I think it's more aesthetics as well. I think it kind of has that classic feel when you put in the ribbon there. And
So are you proposing just natural gray concrete there, or?
I think that's what we are proposing on the.
Yeah, the materials are called out on our landscaping plan.
It just says AC paving and proposed concrete driveway here.
Oh, okay.
There's no.
Yeah, it's the standard.
We had looked at a chart of different colors and weren't really ready to select a color at this time.
Okay.
And so we thought if we were going to go with anything other than the normal color, we would just come back during the course of construction and maybe get some sort of change approved.
Okay, you might want to clarify that on your landscape plan. It's kind of unclear here.
Yeah, 'cause it says concrete driveway there, but then it's shaded like AC.
Yeah, we were going back and forth. I think it might have slipped through the cracks there.
And also in this drawing, it looks like the ribbon's offset. Is that deliberate?
Yeah, it's showing differently on this plan than it is on your site plan.
Okay.
So you just might want to look at that.
The intent is equal spacing, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here.
The street tree, have you spoken to the city arborist about that species? Has that been reviewed by him, by Tim Downey?
I believe it has, because originally that's why we came back here. Because Ken couldn't make it today, the lead architect on it, but he went into the city. I believe he spoke with him, but I couldn't. I'm not 100% sure about that.
Okay, because there
But
are.
it's not something that he would have just called out on his own.
Okay. There's riprap called out on the stormwater, one of the stormwater details, I believe, for your rain garden. So can you describe what material you're proposing to use for that?
I believe it's stone.
Which
It's
sheet is that?
happening.
I'm not sure. It's one of the BMP details, sheet A502. I'm looking at that detail in relationship to your stone wall of
Right.
curb. So I'm just curious to know what is the stone that you're proposing for your riprap, and what is the detail for that wall look like, and how do those work together?
So those are going to match. Right, we're calling the Santa Barbara cobble sandstone. So more than likely it's going to be the same material, since it's happening right where
The cobble soil.
Santa Barbara sandstone.
So you're proposing a real stone veneer for that wall?
It's an existing wall.
Cobble, sandstone. Well, I don't think it would be a veneer because it's so
Right.
small. It would just be a
it
cobble,
would be cobble.
wall.
There's two different things shown on that hardscape legend. One is a cobble for the swale, and the other is a Santa Barbara sandstone veneer for the wall.
That's right.
So,
Now it's existing
Wall
wall.
at sidewalk.
To match existing, right. Wall at sidewalk.
Oh, it's because these walls are going to be constructed.
that's what I'm asking. What
Right.
is that material going to be?
I would say it's going to be the cobble, all of it.
So this call it a veneer is not correct. It's just going to be stones of the cobble wall. And the height is less than a foot at its maximum, is that right?
You know, actually, maybe it will be a veneer.
Oh.
It just depends on that width of that wall.
Can we, let me just, this relates to another question. You have a survey, right?
Yes.
Property was surveyed, so you know the exact distance, for example, between the building and the property line?
Yes.
By survey. Okay. And then does this show existing condition? So I guess that's some clarification is in order.
This is existing. this wall here all the way up to here is existing.
Okay.
So what we've proposed is to come in and build some sort of path, like instead of having the entry, which is currently the entry for the rear unit is right here, and it's a sidewalk that goes down the back side of the property here. And so and then basically if you're going into the front unit, you would access that through the driveway. And so what we've done is we've moved the pathway over here and kind of created a community path and like a better entryway into the property. And so this is the existing. You can see it kind of faintly right there. So we're going to open that up and then match this wall in the
To
interior.
this one.
Right.
And match this to this.
Yeah.
So, but here is where you're poking through and providing that riprap. It's not shown on the landscape plan, but you have a detail then that shows it. So that was the question, is how that
Yeah, I mean, I would probably find a similar
a stone
crushed,
to match.
yeah, stone that I would be putting in there. Okay. I'm also a general
You
contractor.
can add that. That would be a good comment.
There's that tree that's being removed.
Oh, looks like you're removing a tree. Can you describe that?
We discussed that last time we were here.
Did we?
It's
Okay.
an avocado tree
I
that
think I remember that.
very close to the end of its life. It's been surrounded by blacktop for many years. I think there's some photos of it.
Okay, I think I remember that. My only other question was,
The neighbors, just to point out also, the neighbor's garage is actually on the property. I mean, they have a structure here that's literally on the property line coming this way, so this area is not really going to be an impact to anybody, or at least this neighbor on this side.
okay, I think that's all I have.
You don't have a plan that shows that footprint or footprints of your neighbors.
You know, we usually
Photo?
require that.
And we do normally require the footprints of the neighboring properties. Site plan.
Right there.
That is it.
A little rough and ready.
Yeah. So anything here is going to be
Yeah.
a benefit to my project, so.
Okay. Does that complete your questions, Courtney?
Yes, thank
Amy.
you.
I don't have any additional questions.
Okay. So comments, Stephanie.
I think this project is ready for final. The windows, the double hung windows that you've selected on the majority of the front house are appropriate to the style and consistent. And the casement windows are generally on the back and the smaller sized windows, which is also okay, an okay style to select. So, and I think that all the detailing and that you have done is an improvement over the last time we saw it, and definitely going to be a benefit to this property and this neighborhood.
Great. Thank you. Tip.
Yes, the project is ready for final approval as submitted.
Okay. Scott.
No new comments, just commend the applicant for taking a bad situation and really cleaning it up.
Courtney.
I don't have anything to add. Looks good.
Yeah,
Amy.
I agree. I think it's ready for final approval.
I have one small thing to add. I agree also, this is a major improvement to the property and looks very nice. Because of the vinyl windows, and I noticed that they were pushed to the front, I would recommend that they be set back a little deeper into the wall. And your note does say that you have proposed integral color concrete driveway with a sand finish. I would stick with that. That's pretty good. And one small thing, and I just wanted to ask, is probably kind of a question with a comment. The little bay window that juts out, that's kind of faceted, is that is original? Or is that added?
I'm not 100% sure. I can tell you that it's about to fall off the side of the house.
Keep it.
We are going to keep it around. Actually,
It's on the drawings, yeah?
yes, okay, if it's on the drawing, we've gone back and forth on a lot of these things. We actually originally had a door here to try to create a private open space for this downstairs unit that never ended up working out.
That's a nice little window, and rather than
Absolutely.
just have a straight roof, shed roof, coming off a faceted piece, I would recommend that you have a
Hip.
roof that follows where you
Oh,
actually,
absolutely.
instead of straight panel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just makes it a little more.
I agree.
That it would be my only and last comment.
Okay, can we make that a recommendation as opposed to
Yes, sure.
a requirement? Okay,
It's all about being cool.
all right. Just to tack on to Howard's comment, and I'm in agreement with the comments made, it just seems like if you could, looking to, to be cost effective in terms of the driveway treatment, it seems like the enhanced treatment with colored concrete, could either stop here, and then this could be AC, or it could even, if this was, I think you're going to want this to be concrete to hold
Oh,
up over
absolutely.
time. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
it's going to fall apart over time if you do it in AC. So that would be my suggestion. Is
Yeah, I
to,
think we had done a different. I'm not sure. We've got a few things going, so but I can't remember. But we had originally maybe had it coming up to here and kind of turning or doing something, and then leaving this AC back here. But I agree 100%. I think that this little concrete, like a sand finish, like we were talking about.
Okay, so I think we can, I would suggest that we could give this project a final approval and just add that request that certain notes be added to the plan as it goes through the process, and staff can check that. One would be to clarify where the proposed colored concrete driveway area would occur, and the other would be to clarify which existing stone walls are to remain at the front and which are new. And I think also if you could, both on the landscape plan and site plan, identify the dimensions between the house, the driveway, and the planters on both sides. Just dimensionally clarify those.
Mr. Chairman, do we know how they're going to handle water? Do we have a drainage plan?
We do, yes, we do know how they're going to handle water. Yes, they've reviewed that. So would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion to approve as submitted with the comments.
All right.
And the two that you made, I was listening, but I can't remember.
Just to clarify the dimensions of the driveway and planting areas on the south side, to provide notes showing which walls are existing and new, and which are new in the front, and which portion of the driveway will be colored concrete, and which asphalt.
Okay. And I would also like to add the two about setting the vinyl windows back, if possible.
Well, the reason I didn't mention that is because I noticed that those are nail-on, and in order to set those back, they need a different type of window. I'm not sure that that's even available.
But
normally,
it's a 2x4 stud wall. If it's in the early 1900s, so it's probably difficult to set those back in such a narrow wall.
I think that in general that it looks okay when the windows are
Trimmed out.
trimmed.
Right.
It gives that a little bit of an added depth.
right, and he's showing a
that
2x
doesn't-
trim.
Consensus is no one else
okay.
is bothered by this.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
I think
And
when
also-
it's in stucco, it's super flat and it doesn't look good. But in wood siding, I think it works.
Is this wood or FRC?
Wood.
Wood.
Okay. And then about the little eyebrow over the bay window
It's
That's a suggestion.
Suggestion.
Not yeah,
with the suggestion.
yeah.
You got it.
So,
Okay.
Mr. Chair? So actually, that would be project design approval and final approval, but I don't believe it'll be as submitted because you have these little conditions. So it would be project design approval and final approval with the conditions.
with conditions.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Claire, that's true. That's true.
Is there a second?
No,
Oh, under discussion, Amy?
under
Yeah.
discussion.
All right.
I thought that the entire driveway would be the concrete because they're removing all of the blacktop. So,
You thought it was all
yeah,
concrete?
that's what it says on the drawing,
I'm.
on the
It's
site
not
plan.
clarified. It's not clear on the plans.
So I
So we're
guess,
asking for clarification. That's
I
part of
guess
the motion.
I guess I would want the whole thing to be the colored concrete instead of leaving the asphalt. to all be one new surface.
Okay, well, I think we should maybe get the straw vote on that. How many board members feel like the whole driveway needs to be concrete? 1, 2. Okay.
I think otherwise it looks like a patchwork quilt.
Okay.
I agree, but it's so far back from the street at that point that it,
Yeah, it's the whole project is.
Okay, 5 board members feel that it's okay if a portion of the driveway only is colored concrete. So, but we need a second on Howard's motion.
Second.
Seconded by Tip. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
thank you, guys.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, I guess.
On to item 3, which is 1623 De La Vina Street. And these folks are here for a final review of this project, which was last reviewed April 27th, about a month ago. It's a proposal to demolish a vacant 1,251 square foot, 2-story single-family dwelling and a detached garage and construct 3 new 2-story residential units.
I'm Tom Oxner, project architect.
And I'm Scott Menzel, landscape architect.
Welcome. We did have some comments last time. And can we just go through those one by one?
Yes.
Okay.
Why don't I do that? I've got
All
those
right.
here too.
Fantastic.
So, okay, so we'll just pick right down the order here. Number 1, incorporate some continuity of design style details between the 3 buildings. And so I'm going to go right to the elevations and just kind of go through
Sure.
what we've done. We'll start with Unit A. So we've looked at studying the columns and the general detailing around the gables and the rakes, and we've gone to a plumb cut consistently throughout. I'm going to go back and forth as I go through each one of these items, so we'll just
Sure.
kind of page
Fine.
through.
Right there.
Except for right there. You got a good eye. And I've got an architectural detail, though, that hopefully defaults to that. So as you can see, these columns, we've brought some down and brought some up so that there's not such a discrepancy in the massing between the units, but still have a little bit of diversity. And then moving along to Unit C, same, slightly different proportions, but brought the siding around that one. So similar, but slightly different. While we're on, I'm going to go over the doors. The doors, the idea of the front doors on each of the units is to go with a slab door with stained glass, a little bit of a different stained glass for each unit, but basically the same shaped door. So that configuration will be followed through all 3 buildings. Item 3, provide gutters and downspouts on the elevation. So the elevations show the locations of the downspouts. They're disconnected downspouts, and they all land within the planted areas. And we'll see that throughout each of the building, and I believe those locations show up on the site plan also. Let's see, paving details, we'll get to that on the landscape plan. That's item 4. 5, lighting details. We've shown where the exterior lights will be located, and they've been identified on the elevations, and this is the light here that we're going with. So these are the locations. I believe there's 2 exterior lights on each building. They're tiny buildings.
Okay.
Restudy kitchen location to simplify pathways. So if we go, let's just jump to the landscape plan on that one, since it's kind of a crossover comment. Landscape. Oh, did I miss it here? It's kind of a paving plan. Okay, so the idea. Should we go to landscape, actually?
Oh, the planting.
Yeah, the planting plan. I like that one a little better. Okay. So the planting plan. So the idea was to make this a serpentine pathway and to add some stand-up landscaping between the windows on the living room and try to create more of a lush landscape feeling to separate the living space of this building to the pathway.
What page are you on?
We're on page L 4.0. Let's see here. Study providing additional landscape planters through the building, particularly on the driveway. Well, since we're here, you want to just look at that one?
Previously, when we presented, we had a very minimal planter along this building. So we pushed our driveway and walkway closer to this property line, kind of splitting the difference. So we ended up with a planter that would soften the building and also soften this fence line. And then as Tom walked you through, we also addressed that issue along here and even here, creating more of a planter there. And here, I think previously there was no planter, or maybe there was a small one here. Now we have a 3.5-foot wide planter just by, we actually shifted the trash enclosure, which was here. We shifted it down here and was able to push everything closer to Unit A.
And you just touched on item 8 there, exactly, relocating trash enclosure. 9, study relocating private side yard fencing in consideration of potential negative impact on the existing oak and the roots. So the fence along here, we've got a detail for that.
We have a detail, and we also have a note. These will all be pier footing. So we have an approximate 8-foot on-center spacing, but we're asking that might change depending on the occurrence of roots. So that spacing may change, so we avoid cutting any oak tree roots.
Where is that note?
The note?
The note.
Enrich proposals in drip line of oak tree.
L 2.1.
Okay.
Let's go back to the landscape plan here for item 10. For Unit B, alter the vehicular turning radius tighter around the corner and consider utilizing walkways and planters as borrowed space to allow for landscaping in front of the living room. Add additional windows to Unit B. So that I think that was kind of lapping over on that comment. Yeah. Item 11 for Unit C, restudy the bay window. Yeah, that turned out much better. That was a good comment. And Unit C, which is right here. So that is the improved bay window, and it's a low pitched roof that comes up and just dies to zero. Exactly, right up on the side. Item 12, shutters. We restudied the shutters around and just added a few, except for the Unit C. We just weren't feeling it, so we didn't put them on there. But if you feel it's important, we can certainly go back and look at Unit C. Provide consistent window shutters throughout. 13, provide compliance with Tier 2 stormwater management for the disconnection of the downspouts. That shows up on the elevation as well as on the posted Tier 2 conditions on the plans themselves. Provide an irrigation plan, including backflow device details. Should we look at the irrigation plan?
We have an RP backflow device located here, and it will be screened behind. We have some native coffee berries, so it'll be pretty well concealed behind there.
There's, Susan pointed out an inconsistency, and I think it needs to be, the arborist report discourages irrigation underneath the oak trees, so we need to make a condition and alter that to eliminate the irrigation below that oak. Let's see. Reproduce draft conditions of approval on the plans. That was done. And then I think that's it.
Okay.
For item 16, yeah.
There was one item you passed over, return with paver details.
Oh, yeah.
two paving types. We have concrete, sand finish with an integral color, and then we have the permeable pavers. We're using a Belgard Eco Dublin paver.
Do you have a color board, or did you submit it already?
We were going back and forth with different colors for each unit, but I think they're so small we kind of landed on one color palette. The units. It should be a smooth. We're going with a 6-inch lap smooth Hardy with the body and the trim, and then a Celotex dimensional presidential comp roof on that.
Okay. You don't have colors or a sample for
this?
I don't have a sample. The color will be Belgard's Montecito, which is very common. Yeah, like our Santa Barbara sandstone.
And it calls it on the site plan, but it calls all 4 possibilities, so we haven't really committed. But I think that would be what
that
we
was
want
the
to go
preference. Yeah.
Can you just briefly look at the architectural details, door and window, and so on?
Yeah.
Eve, et cetera.
89. It's so what we're doing on the corners is we've got a 3-inch exposed trim on the outside corners. On the inside corners, it's a 2x2. We've got a plumb cut eave with a 5-inch half round, and the window trims are. As it shows on the detail on the elevations, there's a heavier header board with the 3-inch side jamb boards, and then the I think it's a 3-inch sill board as well.
3-inch sill board. Oh, here.
Yeah, that's
2.5 by 3/4.
It says on your detail 3 inches.
Well, let's see. We've got an elevation.
You have a typical window detail.
Yeah, I think if on one of the elevations we show ours. There it is right here. So it's
A
2.5 on A2.0. What does that say? It's a 3-inch trim across the bottom with a 2-inch little apron. The top board is 4 inches, and the jamb vertical trims are 3.
Are those wood windows?
Those are metal clad windows.
Metal clad wood?
Is that what?
Metal clad wood, right?
Or does it say? I thought they were metal clad. Let me see. That would be call out 5. So that is wood trim, window trim. Yeah, those are metal clad windows with the
trim. Yeah. Opposed to hollow metal.
Double hung wood/metal clad windows. Okay. So we'll open public comment, and seeing no one, we'll go to questions from the board. Howard?
I have no questions.
Okay. Amy?
The only question I had was on the shutters, just what the decision of the placement for A and B, and if you thought about just no shutters similar to C. I don't know.
We took them off C.
You took them off C. I think it looks good, but I was just wondering, as far as the placement, what the thought was for like the placement on B.
On B, let's see.
Yeah, and just wondering if it, because it looks like it's just on, in this elevation, it's both of them, but then these, it's just 2, so.
Those kind of windows.
Yeah, I think the thinking was that in some cases it crowds the corners, and in some cases it crowds the windows next to them. So it was just, we kind of spread it around a little bit.
My question was more, did you think about maybe just not using them?
Yeah, we thought about that.
Okay.
And,
that was all I was going to say, just because I agree that it's too tight, and for me, I was wondering if you either do all of them or just
it's good.
none of them.
I could be persuaded either way. But I think our thought on the shutters were to just kind of add a little bit of interest to an elevation that maybe had a lot of exposed siding, or one that was going to get a lot of visual impact.
Mm-hmm.
But it's probably still going to be thinking about it.
Okay.
Other questions, Amy?
No, that was all I had.
Courtney?
Wasn't there another oak tree near the driveway on the neighboring property. Over here somewhere. Am I not misremembering that? It's just this one?
Yeah, there were some incidental trees back there.
Pittosporum and citrus to the back. But
Do you have, was there another plan that showed existing trees?
Excuse me?
Was there another plan that showed existing trees?
just this,
No.
Yeah.
this site plan and then the landscape plan.
We've got a survey of the site.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at
Oh,
that.
I'm remembering that.
Let's see. There's the original survey.
Guess not. Okay. No questions.
Okay, Scott?
Maybe this has already been asked and answered. I just want to double check. You're going to have to do some serious pruning on this oak tree to construct your project, correct?
It's a pretty tall tree.
Is it over the eaves of the house?
It's really high.
Okay.
There might be a few limbs, but it's a tall tree.
Okay.
But that's a good, yeah. I mean, that's the arborist obviously looked at that in context with
Okay.
the tree, but as I recall, it's pretty high.
Okay, no other questions.
Tip?
No further question.
Stephanie?
No questions.
Okay, comments? Howard?
Okay. Actually, the things that you've done, changes you made, have really been improved the project a lot, and I like the spirit of the project. I have two little comments, and that is the question about the shutters as a way of adding interest. Yes, but they don't look right for the type of window. You know, it's this kind of craftsman window. And the other thing is, I don't know if you are familiar with the metal corners that they have for lap siding. Rather than having the trim, it's a,
Where they conform to the.
yeah, it really looks neat.
Yeah,
It
yeah. I've
really-
seen that.
I would recommend that. If you're on the fence about that too, I would try to push you over the fence. But the shutters and the corners would be my only comments.
I didn't understand your corner comment.
You
Howard.
don't understand?
No. What are the metal corners you're talking
Yeah,
about?
they basically, the line of the lap actually continues around the corner, so you don't stop it at each corner. So it's a way of, it was original.
It's a way of like
originally looked.
mitering instead of going to the expense of getting the heavier hardy and actually mitering.
Oh, there's a piece of hardy board that
It's
is
a
a
metal
corner.
thin-
It's a pre.
No, it's a metal. It's a metal piece. It's a little. It paints out with the color of the. It comes
Okay.
pre-finished from Hardy plank.
Okay.
From Hardy, and it's made for doing those corners. It's really
kind of
cool.
clips
So you
on
have
and
to do a
hugs
trim.
flush with the exterior.
It's just a little.
You can see the
Suggestion.
slight reveal if you look closely.
Well, the lap lines just go all the way around. It's just it creates a nice horizontal solid. With that texture.
Yeah, it's a nice look.
Okay, thank you, Howard. Amy?
I agree with Howard's comments, and I like the improvements that you've done to the project, and I think it's going to look nice. And I just would suggest really looking at where you put the shutters so that it makes sense on the entire elevation. But overall, I like the project.
Okay. Courtney?
I think it looks good. I would just clarify the irrigation under the oak issue and specify the paver color.
Scott?
Looks great. No other comments?
Tip?
Yes, I think it's a very nice project. I actually do like the corners. The wood corners better than the metal corners, so just my preference. The way I think you have it probably works. I only have one comment. It's minor, but if you look at sheet 2.0 on the north unit A north elevation, it seems like It seems like you have the downspout is floating. I think probably better off it's next to, not over, to the left, right there. It seems like it's floating in front of the opening. It probably look better if next to the wall. That's it.
Okay, Stephanie?
Well, I think that you've brought them back to adorable. Tom started out that way, and they kind of veered. But as far as the trim goes, I think that I'd like to. I like the trim, the corner trim, and I think that the casing size at the windows and the corner trim could be beefed up a little in dimension, in width. They're a little wimpy looking.
3 inches.
Yeah, it looks a little too small and delicate, and you might have trouble nailing that on at that dimension, especially as your detail shows 2 nails. A more typical dimension would be 5 or 6 inches, especially with the 6-inch hardy board
So it's
flap.
exposure.
That's
5 inches.
exposure, yeah. Oh, you said 6-inch exposure or 5-inch
Oh,
exposure?
yeah, it's a 6-inch exposure.
Yeah.
That's pushing the big side on this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you went to a smaller exposure, you could get away with that smaller
I think I'd
casing dimension. I'm just saying you need to balance those 2 dimensions to get, because of this delicate kind of small size and scale of these buildings.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments?
That's it.
Okay. My own feeling.
I'm sorry. I did have one more question. I think that the entry doors need a little more detail. Slab doors, are, even with the stained glass detail, are just a little bit too plain and for this style of architecture, and would like you to consider a plank door with a little more texture, craftsmanship.
Okay. Well, my own feeling is that this is a very nice project. Small, elegant, well-proportioned units. I think the shutters add a little playfulness to it. It doesn't have to be the same everywhere. I think this is a great project. I think it's ready for final approval myself. I appreciate you listening to the comments that were made last time. Excellent comments that were made last time about shifting the trash and providing more planting in those critical areas. And I think, the suggestions that were made could go one way or another. I think, you're going to find some board members feel one way and some board members feel the other. I don't think anything really is critical that's been mentioned other than the irrigation issue at the Oak. So I don't know how other board members feel. I think this is ready for final approval. We could add some comments to the final approval. And who would like to make the motion?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion for final approval as submitted, with just, I think, some recommendation it's up to you. Number one, looking at the scale of the trims around the windows and the corners. Number two, the downspout on the north elevation of Building A. And I think the shutters seem to be okay. Some member has some comments about that. It's just a recommendation. And last, I think, not a recommendation, but the condition about the drip line of the oak. Let's be clear. And
Okay.
that's it, right?
Yeah, I think you covered it, yeah.
I'll
And the
second
paver color.
And paper colors.
Provide a addition to the color board with showing the paver color.
And I'll second that, and I actually wrote down doors, slab, question mark before.
Right, door
I
slab.
got swept up in the moment and said it looked great. But I think that's a really valid comment about the front doors. They
They actually look good, but I
Do
know I
they?
was surprised. I've seen photos of just a slab, and I had to be talked into it. But yeah,
have a really fantastic stain on them.
yeah.
But
It was a darker color, so you kind of, if it was a plank anyway, you'd kind of lose the.
Okay.
the-
I think the recommendation stands as a
Yeah.
recommendation.
And
Okay,
if-
so you understand the distinction between recommendation as opposed to requirement?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you need any clarification?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I think
Before we
I
vote.
think we have it from the comments because Board Member Kung kind of just said, downspout on the north elevation. I believe that was to relocate it next to the wall.
Yeah, that could be
So-
red.
Against the
Yeah.
wall,
Oh,
yeah.
against the wall?
Against.
Which unit was that?
Unit A on the north elevation.
Unit A. And then remove the irrigation from under drip line of oak tree.
Right.
And then the color, I didn't get that.
We need the color of the pavers to be
Oh.
included as part of the, well, it could be separate, I suppose. It should be on the color board, though. Paver color on the color board.
Okay. Have you chosen the color?
They have. They've chosen, it's
okay.
just not indicated.
Okay, so that's something
On the
that
color board.
can come in when they submit for their building permit, because it won't be coming back to you again.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And then the scale of the trim around windows and corners that should be
That was a
larger.
recommendation to study.
Proportions.
Study
Or look
proportion.
at alternatives, because a suggestion also was made about using metal trim instead of the corners. So it's a recommendation to study.
Okay. And then did you want the slab, the door comment in there?
I think it's a recommendation.
The same way about the shutters,
Yeah,
recommendation.
recommendation.
Yes,
I didn't get the shutter comment.
Really the applicant's choice.
to study the location and use of shutters.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you. That's good.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item is 312 Rancheria Street. It was last reviewed March 30th. And it's a proposal to construct a new 7-unit apartment complex. Hello. Welcome back. Your names?
Keith Rivera, architect. Mark Jacobson, partner.
And we had 6 comments last time. Should we just go through those one by one? Or is there other changes you'd like to talk about?
Sure, we can just go through the comments. There haven't really been any design, configuration changes or anything. It's just fleshing things out.
And are you hoping for a final today, or is this in progress?
Well, we are still coordinating some final stormwater issues. So, if possible, if you have a comfort level after seeing the detailing and the colors, if we could come back on consent for final, that would be great.
Okay.
But we don't have any landscape today or just to look at.
All right. So the comments last time were, number 1, provide final drawings and details. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, we can thumb through the details. Maybe the place to start would be the colors and materials, just so, and then we can get down into the details and look at the doors and windows, because that was a issue, I believe, that folks had. So, let's see. Where are we? So just look at the elevations and colors and materials. And then you want to see a color board. So here we have the color board. Put this right side up. So the way the colors are used is kind of illustrated here. So those corner forms with the vertical hardy panels and the reveals would be this light color here. The board and bat base, which is kind of anchoring the bottom of the building, would be this color here. And that would also carry through on the lower fences. And then the upper mass would be the pre-finished hardy panels, but we would use a smooth texture, not the faux wood here that this sample shows. And then, as kind of suggested by the board last time, our trellis elements on the upper windows and our lattices that are on the actual facades would be red cedar, and then we do kind of a semi-transparent redwood stain to kind of bring the red out a little bit into that. And then doors and windows, the windows we would propose to use the aluminum gelled-wen. You can see the sample behind us here, and that would be the clear anodized finish, just to kind of have that lighter feel to it and sort of tie in with the modern kind of take on the project.
Is that the typical dimension of it too?
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Yeah, it has a nice substantial frame to it. And, well, as long as you stick with the casements and awnings, which is what we've spec'd for all of them. The same window company with the sliders, the
Not so
sash is
good.
completely different.
No, okay.
And then the doors, we're proposing these Therma-Tru fiberglass that then would be painted just to match the rest of the sash. And I don't know, this is a fairly recent project where we use that same product, and it gives a pretty substantial look. And once it's painted, it looks either looks like a metal or a wood door. So that's kind of the colors and materials. There was sort of some discussion last time about these second floor awnings, and I was proposing a perforated metal at the time without really having a sample to show you. So this is the actual material. So this is just a McNichols standard perforated. As you can see, it's a pretty fine texture. It's 22 gauge, so it's pretty substantial in thickness. And this would be used sort of in lieu of fabric, as it were, on these upper floor awnings, but they would be powder coated this same color here to kind of contrast with the light wall finish below. So you can imagine if this is up, 16, 18 feet up in the air, and you're kind of looking up at it at an angle, it kind of comes off as sort of a open weave sort of fabric with this fine grain rather than kind of what you might imagine as a industrial kind of feel with a perforated metal. So that's what we'd like to stick with that. We considered wood like the lattice work, but that just didn't seem like a very good idea maintenance-wise. And then if we got into some sort of HDPE or something like that, the color and finish aren't really going to match the rest of the cedar on the project. So we think this is a good solution there. So that was kind of the response on that. We can look at detailing architecturally. I'm upside down here, so. Yeah.
So going into detailing, and you were just talking about the awnings, is there an awning
there is
support detail?
There is, let's see. Yeah, so this is the detail here. So basically it's square steel tube, and then the metal would rest on the tube, and on the ends you'd have a little steel plate batten essentially, so it finishes off the cut edge, so you won't have any raw edges anywhere. And then we basically turn down the face just 4 inches, which is this width actually, just to kind of give it that skirt. And then that edge would get a hem around all the sides with just a sheet metal so that it has a finished edge. So that's the detail on that. While we're on the sheet metal, these are the wood trellis details. So essentially you have a steel plate that's bolted to the wall with a knife plate coming out, wood bolted on either side of that so the steel's concealed, and then all the wood's kind of wrapped around that. So that's the upper floor awning details. And then just looking at the cladding system, so we have our fiber cement board and bat. It's all rain screen cladding, so we have the board and bat, we have the smooth panels, which would all be the reveal joints, like Pemco reveal joints, and have some examples of that. So this is like a reveal corner trim, it'd be something like that. And then on the for the lap siding, and then for the vertical panels, it would be this sort of reveal pattern that you see on the elevations. And then our lap siding. So the cladding, windows, so the Geldwin windows on the different cladding systems.
This is the outside, so it looks like they protrude out.
They do protrude out a bit there, because basically, the 7/8 or 1 inch for a typical kind of stucco type or wood siding cladding, but we're using the fiber cement, which is going to stick out that far. So with the board and bat, we have trim and the lap siding, and you can see that on the elevation how all the trims track around. So basically, at the flat panel, we have reveals everywhere, and then everywhere else we have trim.
Although at least at the top, you need a gap there to get the water through.
Right. Yeah. You have your 1/4 inch gap around.
So those trellis details we kind of already saw.
Roof, nothing too exciting here. The coping, it's just that it's a real kind of minimal flat faced coping. Doesn't have a big drip kick because we've kind of set it out a little proud of the cladding. And then the site structure, the trash enclosure and bike kind of pergola. So all that's kind of flush framed wood that would all be stained. So the thought is that the frame, as it were, would be the darker color, and then the lattice would all be the redwood color to tie in with everything else. I think that's most of everything.
Okay. Well, so if that completes your presentation, we'll open public comment. And seeing no one, go to questions from the board. Howard?
No questions.
Amy?
I don't have any questions.
Courtney?
No questions.
Scott?
No questions here.
Tip?
No question.
I do have a question.
See, I knew it. It's always Howard.
What is the issue that you have with your drainage that you're still resolving?
Basically, we were trying to fine-tune some of the stormwater so that we can increase some planting areas and minimize some of the retention areas that we had.
So you do have permeable paving, right, in some areas?
Right.
Okay, so this is just a quantitative thing about the volume of water?
Basically, yeah.
And that's it?
Basically, yeah.
So conceptually, you're okay?
Yeah, conceptually, we're in the same direction. We're just trying to fine-tune it so we can just get more planting in the ground.
Okay. That's my question.
Okay. I'm wondering if the landscaping could be reviewed on consent, since our esteemed landscape architect, the sole one on our board, is the consent calendar reviewer. How do other board members feel about that?
I'm fine with that.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right.
Even though it's required under PDA? Can we do that?
We can say that it's ready for PDA, right? And then send it to the consent calendar.
So we're not giving them final?
Yes.
We're not giving them final,
Final.
and we can't give them PDA even,
Well-
because